Now what we're going to do is we're going to switch to lenses. The difference between a mirror and a lens is a lens will let the light actually pass through it, where a mirror actually reflects it. There are two types of lenses. There's this one where it bulges out in the middle, and then this one which curves in at the middle, looks more like an hourglass. So what we're going to do is I have 3 parallel beams set up, and these ones are a little small to play with, so I got these bigger version that bulges out, and I want you to see what happens to the parallel lines. So when I put this one down, well, the parallel lines all focus in on a point. So what's happening is they're converging in on a point. So that means these lenses that bulge out are called converging lens, because you see the parallel lines converge at the center at a point. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to test out one of these lenses that curves in the middle. And again, this is too small for my giant laser, so I got a bigger version of it. So here's my bigger version. When I put it down, what we see happening is that the parallel beams start to diverge out. So this is what we call a diverging lens, where they spread out further and further. And you can see that they're just parallel beams here. And then on this side, they start to spread out and they get out further and further and further. So that's called a diverging lens. Now I'm back to my parallel beams. And what I found was this was called a diverging lens because it spreads the beams out. This one is called a converging lens because the beams converge at a point. Okay, that's why it's converging. The beams actually converge at a point. And when I remove it, you can see my parallel lines come back. Now what I want to try is combining the two so that I can get my parallel beam back. And what I see is when I put the two together, I can, because this one spreads the beam out. Put that back down. This one makes it focus in at a point. That point's called the focal point, by the way. And when I put them back together, if I use both of them, a diverging and a converging, I get back to my parallel. I can see parallel and parallel. Properties of lenses. So there's generally two types of lenses, like you saw in the last video. We have this little lens here, and that's called a converging lens. And the reason it's called a converging lens is it causes all the light beams to converge at a point. And that point is the principal focus. So a converging lens causes light rays that are parallel to the principal axis to converge or meet at one point. And that point is the principal focus. So before, when we had a mirror and we said, okay, where the principal axis and the mirror meet, we call that the vertex. Well, in the lens, we call it the optical center. And another thing that's a little bit different is however far away the principal focus is, if we measure it the opposite way, so let's say this was 3 centimeters to the right, is where the principal focus is where all the little beams focus. We have a new thing that called the secondary principal focus. And it's just same distance away, but in the opposite direction. And we call it F prime. So F prime is an F with a little prime symbol on it. So you would just go F and then put a little prime. The other kind of lens we have is called a diverging lens. It looks like an hourglass. So this is what we call a diverging lens. A diverging lens causes parallel light rays to diverge or spread out. So you saw in the previous video, we have our little lens here, and it makes all the beams spread out. So this time, the principal focus is on the opposite side. So you take where it's curved, and on the curved side, this is where all the light beams would actually meet. And that's where my principal focus is going to be, F. Now, however distance this is away from my optical center, let's say it was 4 centimeters. If I measure 4 centimeters in the opposite direction, that's called my secondary principal focus. And surprise, the symbol is going to be F with the prime. So the prime is a little tick there. If you see that, it's the secondary principal focus. It means the beams aren't actually meeting there. They're meeting on the opposite side. So we have two kinds of lenses. We have converging lens that all the light beams, They converge at a point, it bubbles out in the center. We have the opposite one, which is a diverging lens, where it caves in and it kind of looks like an hourglass to me. It's thinner in the middle than it is on the ends, and this causes the light beams to spread out.